This is Viterbi Voices.
Coming to you from the University of Southern California, Viterbi School of Engineering.
We're here to give you the inside scoop on research, classes, student life, and so much more.
All of these shared by students, faculty, alumni, and other members of the USC community.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Viterbi Voices. As usual, I'm one of your hosts, Paul Ledesma, the Executive Director of Undergraduate Admission here at the USC Viterbi School of Engineering.
Hello, everybody. I'm your other co-host. My name is Maya. I'm a current senior studying Industrial and Systems Engineering here at Viterbi.
Maya, what's happening? It's February. I'm tired. I'm grumpy. It's kind of the last thing I want to do right now is a podcast, but I'm here anyways because you know what? The people love it. The people love it. The people love the podcast.
Oh, I'm not gonna lie. I just had the same conversation with my roommate today. I don't know if it's the rain. I had a rough day today, and I was like, oh,
Did you?
Yeah, but excited to hear your updates. I missed you last week on the podcast. It's a little awkward doing it like the intro outro by myself. I got to admit, like I'm sure you relate. Like I'm just talking to myself. I feel a little silly.
It's whenever you're doing anything by yourself, it's a little weird because it's like, did I get that right? Did I take that too fast? How many takes did you do of it? Was it one take and you were done?
I think I was three. I think it was 3 takes that I would do like a chunk at a time.
Did you write it down or did you just like go?
I just went, which you could probably tell. I just went.
No, I'll tell you, it's better to just go. But I think that there's an in-between step there of maybe like bullet points, like these are the things you want to do. Cause it is when you're talking to no one, you just kind of keep talking and you don't really know how you're weaving it back together. So it's much easier to do these with people. It makes a little more sense.
Yeah.
Rain. Pouring rain this morning, pouring rain today. It's going to be raining all weekend. Well, I guess on and off all weekend, but Sunday, like another 2 inches of rain. And I know that for the majority of people in the world, 2 inches of rain is not a lot, but for LA, that is a lot of rain.
Yeah. And just like the infrastructure in LA as well. Like you can tell when it rains because the streets are flooded way more than any other place in the country where they're used to getting rain.
We're not built for rain.
Yeah, no, a lot of people, it was low attendance in class today. A lot of people did not come. Yeah.
Well, we're here anyways, and we got an episode and we're ready to go and we're excited to get this going. What is this episode all about, Maya?
Yeah, exciting things to talk about. Who needs rain? Because we're talking about space.
There's no rain in space.
It's just space. So this episode is about a super cool organization on campus called the Rocket Propulsion Lab, also known as RPL. You'll hear that a lot throughout the episode. And I had some people who are leaders in the club or have been members for the last couple of years come and talk about what that's about. So RPL, just a quick summary is this club, it's entirely student-driven. It honestly functions almost like a company, has an open door policy, and they make rockets, which is really cool. And they're very renowned across the world. This is like a very unique program, and it's like uniquely very successful at USC. So you'll hear them talk more about the details about what they do and the different teams. But I know that this was a big part of why all 3 of the people I interviewed chose to come to USC, which is really cool.
Go ahead.
Girl power episode. There were sweet. three girls.
Fantastic. Yeah. Rocket Propulsion Lab is the first, I don't know if it's the first student group to ever reach space, passing the von Karman line, which is something that I'm sure they'll talk about in more detail. And recently the first, I think it was just a couple of weeks ago, and maybe they talked about this. Did they talk about this? The static fire test?
Yes.
All right. Yeah, because that's another new record that the Rocket Propulsion Lab has now broken. So really, really super exciting. Let's get out of the way and hand it over to the ladies to talk a little bit more about building rockets and blowing stuff up.
All right, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Viterbi Voices. You probably just heard me speak on the intro to this episode, but I'm Maya, and I'm very excited to be here with some very special guests today. The theme of this podcast is RPL. And like we'll explore like what is RPL. I'll definitely let them do the intro because I probably wouldn't know what I'm really talking about. But I think space is a really interesting conversation. RPL is one of these really cool established organizations for students here. And I definitely have heard a lot of questions about like what is it about? What do you do? So I will let the masters at it take it away. So I'll just have you guys introduce yourselves, maybe like what year you are in school, what major, anything else that you feel like sharing too.
Yeah, hi guys. My name's Abby. I'm a senior in mechanical engineering, and I am the lab leader executive engineer of USC RPL.
Hi guys, my name's Meghna. I'm also a senior in mechanical engineering, also getting my PDP in Astro, and I am the lead operations engineer of RPL.
Hi guys, my name is Kaleigh. I am a junior studying astronautical engineering, also getting my PDP in astronautical engineering, and I am on the composites team for Rocket Propulsion Lab.
All right. So I'm going to start with the biggest hard-hitting question. That is just how did you get interested in like space and this industry and rockets? Like what was that journey like for you guys?
Yeah, I think for me, it started pretty young. I was in like eighth grade when I heard about aerospace engineering just in general. I was like, that sounds really cool. Rockets are cool. And then when I was a sophomore in high school, I had to do a bottle rocket project. So after doing that, I was like, this is really cool. There's a lot of obviously, we're doing this at a much bigger scale now, but there's a lot of really cool things that you can do. And yeah, that's kind of what ignited my passion for aerospace.
Bottle rockets. How was the bottle rocket?
It was good. Yeah, I got to like 3D print some parts. I'd never used CAD softwares before, so that was like a bit of a learning curve, but it was really cool and fun. I didn't have the typical like robotics experience that a lot of people
Mhm.
have, but it was cool to get like a little bit experience before coming into college.
Mhm. Awesome. Well, how about you other two? Did you have like this hands-on experience with it before? Was this like an always you were interested in thing or a college thing?
I guess like for me, I was like always interested in space, like from really young. I was like, oh my God, it'd be so cool to be an astronaut and things like that. But pretty much up until like my senior year, I was kind of flip-flopping between engineering and music. And then I like found out about USC and USC RPL and like this great program. And then I realized that like I could sort of do both, but then still
Mhm.
like be really involved in space. And then like I think from day one in RPL, I was just like, all right, this is it. This is where I gotta be.
Mhm.
Yeah, for me, sort of similar to Abby, like I thought space was cool, but in high school, I did a program between my sophomore and my junior year over summer at Cal Poly SLO, and we got to do like make a small rocket with it, and that was really fun. I never considered space. I was always interested in like military like aircraft because I just like thought that like the jets were really cool. So like after that I was like more interested in like spacecraft and rocketry. And
Mhm.
it's just like I don't know, something that's definitely grown, I feel like throughout my lifetime and
Mhm.
became more like prevalent. So it was also really exciting.
Mhm. Like you mean the space industry seems like
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
growing within. Yeah, I think like yeah, it's like SpaceX and all these new space companies. Like it's definitely something I didn't hear before like getting into college and now I'm like, "Oh wow, like this is a huge thing and it's like super exciting all the stuff that's going on." I guess do you guys have any like I don't know, any things that you're particularly excited about with the space industry and new companies? Do you read the space news?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I'm really excited to see the Starship
Mhm.
next test flight. Seeing that go off is going to be pretty cool. Like the world's biggest rocket. Once they get that to work, will be insane.
Mhm. Awesome. Well, let's quick give a first background, I guess, for myself and for the people listening to this podcast. So the group that brought us here today, this is RPL. So would you mind explaining like what that stands for? Different parts of the club, just in general, like a quick crash course.
Yeah, yeah, I can give like some background on the club if Meghna and Kaylee want to kind of explain sub teams a little bit later. But Just like a quick overview, USC RPL is the Rocket Propulsion Lab that's held here on campus. We were founded back in 2005 with the goal of becoming the first student team to send a rocket to space. Back in 2019, we actually accomplished this goal with our vehicle Traveler 4. It reached an apogee of around 340,000 feet. And since then, we've kind of like altered our goals to becoming, a team with a single space shot, but to becoming a rocketry team with a reliable space program. So our new goal is to be sending rockets to space every single year. And no student team since us has sent a rocket to space. And during COVID, we had some setbacks. So we are now trying to launch a rocket back to space for the first time since Traveler 4 this year with our upcoming flight vehicle Aftershock. We are hoping to break the amateur world record for the highest rocket ever fired. And last semester, we actually broke the world record for the largest static fire motor ever for a amateur rocket case.
Okay, awesome. What is a static fire motor?
Yeah, so a static fire is basically where you take an entire rocket and you put it on the ground and you hold it in place and then you just fire it off. And what you're doing for that static fire test is you're making sure that your rocket motor will be able to hold pressure when you're firing. It also is able to test out your nozzle design. You're able to like get all these calculations for thrust and strain to see how much the case is expanding, to figure out how high you're actually going to go when we launch this vertically. And so that's kind of a fundamental test that we have in USC RPL. A lot of other, companies in industry also do it just to make sure that there aren't, gaping issues. Like if you go without a static fire and go and fire your rocket and it blows up immediately, that's probably an issue you could have caught earlier if you had done the static fire. So it's a little bit less involved. You build less of the vehicle, but it gives you a good gauge as to whether or not your launch vehicle is going to work.
Okay, cool. And after this test, you guys are very encouraged by the results?
Yeah, we it was successful. It generated like I think 46,000 pound force. And so yeah, that was the biggest static fire motor that was ever built by students.
Woohoo. So the club, like obviously, so you're doing all these separate things. I'm sure there are a bunch of different teams that go into building the rocket. So how is the club structured and like what sorts of things do each of you guys work on?
Yeah, so in terms of overall structure, Abbey is our fearless lab lead, so she sort of drives the lab vision, lab goals. She communicates with all of our launch sites, the FAA, a lot of our corporate sponsors, and she's really the person like tying everything together. She's the final QC check on all of our parts. My role is more as operations, more to make sure that we are able to function as a lab and like can actually get out there to the desert and fire our rockets. So I handle a lot of the interfacing with USC, like EH&S, the astronautical department, a lot of sort of the operational stuff that is needed to get like 100 people out to the desert and fire a rocket, trip logistics, things like that. In terms of sub-teams, one of the things at RPL that sets us apart from pretty much any other team is that we have a principle of like raw materials in to rockets out. So anything you see on our rocket is designed, analyzed, made, and tested by students. So our biggest team that Kaleigh's a part of also is our composites team. So they build the airframe, the nose cone, the nozzle, the fins, pretty much anything that you can see when you look at the rocket, just like from an outside perspective. So that's a lot of like doing a lot of layups, carbon fiber, fiberglass, materials like that. We've got our propulsion team, which makes designs and makes our motors, so our propellant that actually sends us, to space. From scratch. So they go out to a facility and they mix our own propellant and cast it through formulas that we've developed like throughout the years. We have our avionics sub team. So they design and make our PCBs, so printed circuit boards that actually go into our rocket, and they're how we are able to tell how high our rocket's going, where it's going, how fast it's going. That also like gives us instructions on when to deploy our parachutes and serves as like a tracking beacon for us to go find the rocket again. And then we have our recovery sub team, and they deal with sort of all the mechanical components of the recovery subsystem. So the parachutes, integrating the parachutes in, separating the nose cone and airframe at the rocket's highest point so that we can have parachutes and find our rocket at the end of it. We've got analysis and simulations sub-teams. So simulations determines like where our rocket's going to go, how fast it's going to go, and where it's going to land. So a lot of like how do we actually design our rocket. Analysis deals with individual parts, so running FEA and CFD on the parts and seeing whether or not they're going to survive in the actual flight. And we've got our DAC, our data acquisition team. So they handle like gathering all of our data that we have during static fires. Like Abbey mentioned, we're getting readouts of pressure, thrust, strain, things like that. So our DAC team is actually able to take those and turn them into functional plots. I think that, am I missing any? We also have operations.
Machining, yeah.
Machining, that's a big one.
Process.
So our machining team works here on campus to make pretty much all of our metal parts that go in our rockets. So like I said, those are also designed and made by students. So we work a lot in makerspace. Everyone's gotten really good at like using the lathe, using the mill, all sorts of machines, very hands-on work. And then we've got our amazing production systems team. So they sort of keep our online infrastructure going, our ordering system, what else, like our Discord server, things like that, our internal Confluence, which we use as like a wiki for all of the knowledge that we have. Yeah, they're responsible for that and they keep that going. Yeah, and then we have like, I have a team of operations leads that help me out in making sure we can get to where we want to go. I think that's pretty much it. And then there's like miscellaneous tasks that get kind of shuffled to each and every different team.
Oh my gosh, that was so impressive. Also, just to hear you list off and like remember all the different teams and the components that go into this this construction. It seems like, honestly, it feels like it functions almost like a company, I feel like, versus some of the other clubs that I've been a part of at USC. Like you guys definitely like you have everything together, it sounds like. So does it happen that most people will like choose a team and join that team, or do people flex around, or are they on multiple things?
I feel like people a lot of times start off at the one that's most interesting to them or like convenient. And then they sort of like shuffle into where they think they like best. I feel like that ends up a lot of times initially starting with composites because like we do a lot of hands-on work, and a lot of the work that we do is like just cutting material. So that's like very straightforward and easy. And we occupy like a lot of like hours in lab. So we're always in there. And then I think after people sort of figure out like, oh, these are the parts of the rocket, this is how it comes together, they're able to like go into other teams and work a little bit more and other stuff, because it makes a little bit more sense.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Would you guys agree with that? Like,
yeah, I think I think definitely like for my year, because me and Abbey started out as when we started out as freshmen, or like when I started out as a freshman, it was COVID. So most of the work that I could do because I wasn't on campus was primarily CAD and then a lot of recovery. And so I was like very, very involved in that. And then when I actually got to campus sophomore year, I was able to dip my toe into everything. You know, I went casting, went to a lot of layups, things like that. And then I think like by the time you start sort of leading dev projects or, you know, becoming like an engineering leader, things like that, your junior year, and then you have to take mech ops, you kind of get like, you sort of end up having to pick, just because of like how much time you want to put into things that are important to you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Totally makes sense. How, out of curiosity, how large is like the club as a whole?
Yeah, so we don't have like an official count. We have a complete open door policy. So if you want to come for 1 hour throughout the entire like build process, you can. When we go out to static fire and launches, we typically get around 100 students. We consistently have 60 people contributing to our builds. And then we have a team, like Meghna just listed off our engineering team, which has 11 leads, and then myself, so 12.
Dang, that's so, it's like, I feel like it, for 100 people even to be doing the work that you guys are doing, like that's insane. That's nuts. So did you all know that you wanted to join RPL when you were coming into USC? Like you had heard about this program? Like actually, I think, so I'm also a senior this year. So when I was applying to schools or like trying to decide on a school, I think USC was like plugging the fact that like, oh, we had just like launched this to space as the first student team. So I remember like hearing about it, always kind of wondering, but yeah, was this something that you guys knew a lot of going into? Is this a big thing within like the astronautical engineering department too?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I definitely knew that I wanted to be in this club. It's part of the reason that I chose USC. I had a little bit of a slow start too, because of COVID. My freshman year, everything was online. But then as soon as classes started my sophomore year, I was in lab pretty much every single day.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, kind of the same. Like I chose USC a lot in part because I'd heard about RPL. Um, and yeah, I like joined as much as you can join virtually, doing a lot of CAD and other things. And then yeah, I was just in lab from day one sophomore year. Yeah.
Yeah, similar to me too. My junior year of high school, I took a tour of USC and I got to tour lab, and I was like, this is the coolest thing ever. And so um like after that, like that was like my USC like basically instantly became my number one from that. I was like, I can go to school and build rockets. Seems like pretty ideal for what I wanted to do. And so yeah, for me, first day freshman year, I was like in lab working, didn't know basically anything, but I've learned a lot since then.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, on the topic of learning, like what do you guys think you've learned? Like what are some lessons from your time in the club? Like what have you learned about, I guess, the industry, just in general? Yeah.
Okay, I can go for a bit. I think it's a combination of like two main things. Like I think I did a lot of like technical learning and growing, especially in like my first year or two in like RPL, especially in person. And like for sure, like the first internship I got, or like anything that I did in like my last couple of internships, like a lot of that knowledge, most of that knowledge is just purely RPL stuff that I've learned like from people who are now alumni, but like people who were like juniors and seniors when I was a sophomore. That really taught me a lot, like helped me grow technically, and also like were willing to listen to any like ideas I had and like encourage them, while also like not being afraid to sort of give good constructive feedback, which I think is really great. Like the pace that our lab moves at is super fast, and that is especially helpful, and like it makes working full time a lot easier when you actually get to it and then you realize, oh okay, this is like kind of like lab. And then since like being a lead, I think it's been a lot of like, I guess, soft skills like communicating and even like getting more confident in myself as a leader and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's been pretty like, I'm pretty grateful to this lab for like
Mm-hmm.
everything I've learned here.
Yeah, well, you sound great, very articulate, honestly, on the podcast right now. Like I'm impressed with all of you guys. Any other lessons?
I think for me, I've also developed quite a bit technically. I mean, coming in as a freshman, I couldn't tell you the difference between a nozzle and a nose cone.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, I'm at a very different point now. I know a lot more about rockets, know a lot more about how to make them, fly, and then how to build them as well. But I think more importantly, one of the things that lab really develops is some of those like soft skills that Meghna talked about. You really also like you learn how to problem solve, and you learn how to be resilient. When we go out on these desert trips, we're out there for hours. You're not sleeping very much. You might not be eating very much. You might not be like drinking enough water and all these things. And it's really, really harsh physical conditions. And a lot of times you just have to persevere. It might be 4 a.m., but we need to finish integrating the rocket so that we can hit our launch time. And there's been several cases like that where it's just you really learn how to dig deep and how to push yourself both mentally and physically. I'm also an athlete here at USC, and I've certainly had experience where you need to dig deep with athletics, but I think the things that I've faced in RPL like surpass that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think working in composites, it being something that's has a lot of uncertainty, um, it's sort of not an exact science, even though you like really want it to be. It's not ideal almost ever. You really learn like how to just like when a part doesn't work, it comes out wrong, like assess the situation, try to come up with a solution, because like everything sort of depends on it. Um, yeah, I just think being not afraid to like just try again, and knowing that like there's just some things that you can't control, but like to try to control the things that you can control very well, and just understanding the details and attention to details, I think is really important. But yeah, definitely like the patience and the resilience is a big thing.
Okay, awesome. Well, yeah, it sounds like you guys have like there's this great combination of like you're developing very insanely technically. Like if you ask me now what's the difference between what was it, a nozzle and a nose cone, I would be like, yep, I have no idea, no clue. So it's really cool to be able to come in as a freshman and develop to, I guess, the point where you guys are now. And then also like all the soft skills, like those are important. I feel like regardless of what you do, even if you're like not even going to a career, just like navigating your life, I think those are all really important things. Um, so Abby, I know you mentioned also being involved in athletics and everybody else. I'm assuming you guys also have like other things going on, whether that be class, work. How do you manage spending your time between RPL and everything else?
Yeah, it's pretty difficult. Being a full-time student, being a student athlete, and being in this club is definitely a lot. But I will say, like, when you love everything you do, you make time for it. And that's one of the things that, like, I really found. I didn't think I would be this involved in RPL. I never thought I would be a lead or even, the lab lead. But when I first walked into this club and I realized the value of it, I just fell in love with it. And you make time. You might not get the social like time that you maybe had gotten before or wish that you got, but it's worth it in the end.
Yeah, and I feel like then you get the social time with the other people who are in RPL and like that quality time working with people. So it's just a matter of like doing something that you love and just making sure that's like how you're spending your time. So yeah, very cool.
Yeah.
How about you guys? Any other things? Any other advice?
Yeah, I think like Abby said, it's honestly also really inspiring to like we were just talking about this like yesterday at what was it, like 9:30 p.m. when we were like sitting outside lab and we were like, this is crazy and we're here on a Tuesday night, but we would do this all again. Which I think it's also for me at least it's been really inspiring to see this community of people that like also love this as much as I do, which that drive honestly keeps you going. And especially like seeing a static fire or a launch and watching it work, like that moment is definitely makes it all worth it. In terms of like actual time management and not, I guess for me, like I'm also a music minor, and so having that escape from something that's like not engineering or not math or not technical is super helpful because then a lot of times like if it's been like a really tough lab week, then you can kind of like take a break and like get away from it. I think also it definitely comes in stages, right? There's times where like I'll be more focused a lot of times where I'll be more focused on lab, times where I'll be more focused on like classes or like music. But yeah, like Abby said, honestly, if you love the things you do, then it just sort of happens.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree with both of those things. Definitely always, using my calendar,
Mm-hmm.
and like, yeah, like doing other things outside of lab for like my sanity is always important. But yeah, just planning everything out, and like being realistic with like the time commitments and all of that is really important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, my Google Calendar goes crazy. I feel like that's how it is to be somebody who's involved like in college. You just got to schedule everything out, and then like there tends to be time for everything that you need. But yeah, my roommates think it's funny. I started sending them like Google Calendar invites if we're having like a game night, and I'm like, well, I just put it on my calendar anyways, so like might as well send it to you guys. Are there any things that you guys like to do for fun besides you guys all sound incredibly busy, but like besides RPL, besides being an athlete, besides your music minor, besides I don't know, working, Kaleigh, what do you guys like to do? This was such a stressful question for me like 2 years ago, by the way. I'm like, I feel like I just didn't have hobbies. Like it's hard to have hobbies as an engineer. So I'm sorry for asking what might be a hard question. But yeah, like what do you like?
For me, I don't really have much time during the school year to do this, but I really like hiking, going
Mhm.
outside, pretty much doing anything I can outside. I do a lot of like backpacking trips and stuff over the summer, so it's kind of, yeah, the biggest thing.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I like outdoors too. I really like I'm sort of like a stay-at-home person. I'm
Mhm.
like such a homebody, so like watching movies, game nights with my friends, game nights with you, Maya, stuff like that is always fun. I really like baking, so I try to
Mhm.
bake like once every 2 weeks at least. Sort of something that my mom and I started over COVID. We would try a new recipe every week. So
Mhm.
I just like trying to do that here. And so yeah, things like that.
Haley, we've been rationing your sugar cookies in my house. So for context, Abby and Meghna, Kaylee baked sugar cookies and we had
No,
like
we
a
had
game
them
night.
too. They're
They,
so good.
oh my gosh. Like I feel like we need to post the recipe with this episode. Like those cookies were so good. Oh my gosh. Yeah. I was gonna say, if you guys haven't had Kayleigh's baking, like Kaleigh, you gotta bake some cookies. Awesome. How about you, Meghna? Any hobbies? Anything's like you wish you had the time to do too?
Yeah, I love reading. I wish I had more
Mhm.
time for it. Definitely something I did over break a lot. Like I know I studied, but I still also really love music. So like
Mhm.
I miss singing with people. That's something I haven't been able to do a lot. But yeah, just like hiking, exploring new places, getting out, and then like I also really like cooking. So I try to do as much of that as I can.
Exciting. Okay, so for you hikers, where do you like to go in LA? I've been like on a hunch. I also enjoy hiking and being outside, and I feel like I don't know, I'm always like try to find a new place and then I feel like I end up like somewhat near Culver City or whatever. So where do you guys go or where would you recommend?
I haven't hiked too much in LA. I'm from Oregon, so the
Mhm.
Pacific Northwest has great hiking.
Mhm.
That's where I do most of it, like over the summers. But here, like I typically end up around Griffith Park. I've done a couple things in like Los Angeles National Forest that have been good, kind of like up by JPL. But nothing more than that.
Okay. Noted.
Yeah, I feel like also like sort of driving like up the coast. I feel like there's some okay beach hikes that you can go on, like in
Mhm.
Malibu. But yeah, I feel like it just ends up being like Griffith or like Hollywood sign.
Mhm. Mhm. Have you guys ever gone into the observatory in Griffith like during the night? Yeah. Is it cool? I honestly I can't remember if I went in or if like the line was too long this one time. Would you recommend it? And was it cool? Like just space stuff? Was it cool to see? Kayleigh's laughing
I
at
went
me.
during the day, but it was cool.
hmm
Yeah, I want to go back during at night. I think it would be really cool to see.
hmm
Yeah, I went like we went in like sunset, so it was kind of perfect. We got both. But yeah, it was definitely really cool, especially when it got dark.
hmm Awesome.
Yeah, I haven't had time to go in the observatory, but like I went sort of at like sunset time, but then I had to go somewhere else. So like I had
hmm
to leave.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a very fun place. It's particularly for sunset. I feel like the sunset picnics that you see at Griffith with like the quintessential, you get the LA backdrop, the really pretty sunset. It's very California. Yeah, coming from outside of California for school, I was like, oh, I feel so cool. I feel so LA. Okay, I'll bring it back to RPL now. Sorry for the quick little hiking diversion. But what so you guys all said that you like knew you wanted to go into RPL like as a freshman. So what would you recommend to like a similar person as a freshman? You know, they know they're interested in RPL, they're interested in space, but they feel like they don't really have experience. Like, what's your recommendation to them? Like as far as in the club, but just in general at USC.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, the biggest thing that helped is getting as much hands-on experience as possible. And in my opinion, the best way is to go through RPL. Obviously, I'm pretty biased,
Mhm.
but I think that that's really where I grew the most. Like I said, I knew nothing about rockets. In Rocket Lab, we teach you everything that you need to know to do all the work that you need to do. Most of our teams are very, very inclusive and really focus on trying to teach young engineers the skills that they need and that they'll need in industry. And so, like Kaleigh was talking about the composites team being very open. They do pretty complex layups. And if you don't know what a layup as a freshman is, that's totally fine. I didn't either. But they will teach you how to do every single step of that process. And then obviously as you progress through lab, I think that's the best way for development is just go in every single day and ask questions, be open to learning, and the more time you put in, the more you'll get out, the quicker you'll learn.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, great advice. And I know I didn't mention it earlier, but I think it's so cool that RPL has this open door policy. And I think like from what I heard, it's like open door for all majors as well. So like if you think this is something cool, regardless of if you're studying business or if you're in engineering, like you can just be a part of it. And I think that's a good philosophy for clubs. I feel like at USC, a lot of the clubs like somewhat can be competitive. You know, you have the applications and like sometimes you have multiple rounds and you have to go through interviews and like it is pretty selective, I think, for some of these clubs. So it's cool to hear about like such an impactful club just being like available to everyone.
Yeah, I think the cool thing about RPL is like we say this all the time, but it's sort of what you get out of it is what you put in. Like Abby said, if you have 1 hour per week, like we'll take that. But there are also people putting in like 30, 40 hours a week, which we'll also take. It really depends like how much time you want to be in there. And then like the people who grow the most from RPL and definitely like do get that sort of like insane technical and personal development out of it are definitely the people who are like able to be there the most. And so, yeah, I mean, like you definitely develop a lot. You get a lot of like really great friends along the way. So yeah, it's definitely a really cool policy, and it sort of like self-selects itself because people can kind of just choose what they want to do.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, do you feel the same way, Kaleigh?
Yep. And there's always stuff to be done, so it's never a dull moment.
Yeah, that's what I'm feel like I'm learning in college is it's like there's always more things that you can do, and it's just like determining like what's enough, and like how much time do I want to put into this, but yeah, always room for more. And I feel like building rockets too, like yeah, I can imagine like there's always room to spend more time testing and doing everything with that. So looking forward as well. So you guys have learned so much from RPL. Sounds like a really great community. Do you guys know, like in general, like what you want to do, like maybe next summer or after graduation? Like, do you plan to stay within the industry? And do you think most people in RPL do?
Yeah, I can start. So I will be staying in the industry. I have a full-time job that'll start midsummer. I'll be working at SpaceX as a manufacturing engineer for the Merlin engines. I think that a lot of RPL people stay in the industry. A lot of people are at SpaceX. The two founders of Relativity actually were RPL members as well.
Oh, cool.
So within the space industry, there's a really big RPL network. Ursa Major, another big space company, was founded by two RPL members. And so if you go to pretty much any of these big companies, there will be RPL alumni at them.
Do you guys ever do events with the alumni? Okay.
Yeah. A lot of them are pretty invested in how things are going now. So we see them quite a bit.
Okay, that's so fun. And for those of you prospective students listening, like that is such an underrated, fantastic resource. I feel like those connections through clubs and those like more personal, like any group you can be a part of, where then you're given access to these smaller events, and this networking experience, like that's the key to like learning in general about like what you want to do and then also getting a job.
Yeah, like we hold our own like career events and things like that. Like we try to have like a panel and like a lot of recruiting events with a lot of times like companies, sometimes smaller companies that don't have RPL members, like are very quickly gaining their first RPL intern, and then like a whole load of them are following. So yeah, it's definitely a really, really, really cool environment, especially like for career development. Like I got my first internship like after an RPL member, like an alumni as one of my friends, like had an internship there, and like recommended the place, and had a really good experience there. And then I'm heading to SpaceX this summer as well, to work on the Raptor engine fluid systems. So pretty excited for that. We'll see where that goes. But yeah, I think like for the most part, everyone stays in the industry. A lot of people, some people do end up going on to like higher education. We've got a former lab lead that's doing his PhD right now. So yeah, it's a very like very stimulating environment, and like there's always someone ready to give you advice, like no matter what path you want to take, even if it's not in the industry.
Also cool, you guys are working on two separate engines, Merlin and Raptor. Awesome. And then yeah, Kaleigh, I know you, but I'm going to make you share it with the podcast.
This summer I'm gonna be interning at Relativity, so I'm doing vehicle engineering. So Relativity founded by two RPL members, which is insanely cool. And then on the topic of sort of the alumni reaching back, they also like, even if they can't like come to an event or whatever, they're always talking about like, hey, like I work in like such and such team at such and such company and we're like hiring. So there's also those like connections and just like opportunities that you learn about that are always being shared and stuff like that. Yeah, definitely very, very great way to get a job. The summer after my freshman year, I had an internship, which was sort of insane because I fully expected to just go home and like lie on my parents' couch for the whole summer. But one of the students in RPL was like part of Patty Grace Smith Fellowship. And so in the beginning of the semester, they had to talk about that. And I was like, oh, I guess I'll apply, like, whatever. I ended up getting in. So that was an insane experience. So just things like that. I feel like people are always having really cool opportunities through RPL.
Yeah, it sounds like it. You guys are so impressive too, for the record. Yeah, this is awesome. And I'm also noticing just now, like this is all girls on the podcast. This is just a little women in STEM moment right now. Do you think like what's the composition like at RPL? Yeah.
Yeah, so the past 2 years, it's been really great. The lab lead and operations lead have been women, and it's really great to see women succeeding in a typically male-dominated field. Um, I would say probably this year we're like 30% female. You guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but the numbers are typically a little bit better than like your aerospace industry, like aerospace companies. Those are, mostly men. But yeah, we really try to strive to have an inclusive environment. And especially having so many women on our leadership team, like the last 2 years, almost half of our leadership team has been women. We really try to encourage female engineers.
Okay. I love it. Awesome. I know that was part of the reason I think I came to USC as well, Like I think that was the first year they had reached gender parity or like sort of near that when we all started college. And I just thought that was really awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely very cool to see like a lot of women, doing things that you dream of. And in RPL, we've got like a select like an RP ladies channel, and so we like host events. We go out for brunch, or we like last year, what did we watch? We watched it's called Hidden Figures together
I
at our
love
lab
that
lead and
movie.
obsolete house. Yeah. So yeah, we keep having little events like that, trying to make sure that everyone stays connected and feels supported in this club.
Okay. I feel like what does RPL not do? Honestly, you guys have career, you have like the personal events, you guys hang out, you learn a lot of things, you build rockets. Like, what's next? What is RPL adding next? You guys into climbing? I feel like that's also this is so random. I feel like that's another like that's what I predict the next step. I feel like that's the next like engineering thing. Different engineering clubs will have like a climbing team.
We have some folks that do go climbing, and there's a couple that are starting to climb together. So maybe that's what's next. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. So I guess thinking of wrapping up this podcast, do you guys have any piece of advice for students just in general, like coming into USC, thinking about what they want to do? Maybe they're interested in space, maybe they're not, but just yeah, what is your advice?
I can start. I would say if you think you might be interested in it, try it because you can always just quit.
Mhm.
Um, it's better to like just like sort of dip your toe in the water than like just avoid it entirely and then like look back and be like, oh, I wish I would have done this. So yeah, don't be afraid to just try new things. You'll never know where it takes you. Um, and like make a ton of connections, make friends because they're really important.
Mhm.
Yeah, sort of similar. I would say like, you know, regardless of whether it's space or like anything else, like try it out. Like even if you're a little bit nervous about it, just go for it. And like even if you end up like if you're like super into space and you're like, oh my gosh, like RPL is gonna be my whole life, I think like try other things that you're like even slightly interested in because like freshman and sophomore year, like the underclassmen years are the times to like just try everything without any sort of like fear of, failing or anything like that. But yeah, just go
Mhm.
for it.
Mhm.
Yeah, just to add to that, USC has a lot of really, really great resources, no matter what you're interested in. There are so many different opportunities for students. I was, this semester I had to add some classes, and there's a ton of just random PE classes that are great. There's like a surfing class, there's a sleep class. I'm taking a sailing class. There's a lot of just like random things for whatever you're interested in. And I'll say like, while you're at USC, get your tuition's worth. Make sure that you're using all of the
Mhm.
resources that are available to you.
Okay, awesome. Well, you guys had some great advice. I yeah, particularly like the point about just getting involved your freshman year. I think I probably joined like 6 clubs and yeah, I'm probably in one of them now. But that's what like freshman and sophomore year is for, you just experience a bunch of different things, like get it on the resume, learn what you can, and then you learn what you like and you don't like. So very cool. Well, thank you guys all for taking the time to chat with me today. I enjoyed learning more about RPL. In hindsight, I wish I had listened to this podcast coming into college. I definitely would have shown up, like particularly with the open door policy. Maybe if I was in person at USC, I would have. But yeah, I really appreciate you guys taking the time, and I know everybody listening will as well. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks.
Welcome back, everybody. Paul, what are your thoughts on space? And yeah, what level
Well,
of
number
interested are
one,
you?
number one, in space, no one can hear you scream. That's number one. Everyone should know that. And for anyone that's not as old as I am, that doesn't make any sense. Do you know? Have you ever heard that before? Because you're looking at me so perplexed.
I think I have heard it before. Yeah, just like the lack of matter. There's nothing for the sound to bounce off of.
It was a marketing campaign for the movie Alien.
Mm.
In space, no one can hear you scream. And every time I think of space, that's all I ever think of. Or the fact that like there's these movies in space and there's explosions and they wouldn't sound like that because they wouldn't sound like anything. But
yeah, not gonna like coming into the episode, I had an interest, but definitely low familiarity with space. And yeah, now I feel like I can explain like the difference between, I think they said it was a nose cone and a nozzle. So
there
yeah,
you go.
I consider that a success. And for those of you guys who are more interested in space, I'm sure the technical terms that they threw out will be very exciting and make a lot more sense to you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that what's so funny and so not funny, but so interesting, this is how completely fried my brain is right now. What's so interesting about space is that it it has all these connotations. What I was getting to is that it has all these connotations and references in pop culture, whether that's, you know, Star Trek or Star Wars, and other types of like sci-fi movies. But we're at a point where sci-fi, the science fiction kind of realm, has inspired current technology leaders, and things that could be dreamt up are now being able to actually be built. And this is happening in, you know, universities such as ours with students that are thinking about space exploration, whether that's space tourism, but also just all of the technology that comes out of space technology is what I most think of. And all the things that have been developed and understood about it is fantastic. And we can get into long, wide ranging discussions about what we're doing with space exploration as a country or as a civilization, and different people's thoughts and opinions on how this is like a long-term survival mechanism. But overall, it's just one of those things where this is everything that has to do with space not only pushes the envelope of human ingenuity, but also pushes the envelope of what technology can do, because every single problem in space is that much more challenging and involves new ways of thinking that can never be thought of here. And as a result of that, the spin-offs of the technology that gets created for that changes a lot of the things that we do here in our society on this planet. So really, really cool stuff.
Yeah, certainly an exciting time to be an engineer, and yeah, an exciting time to be alive, honestly.
Absolutely. So what's going on now? You're in February. Anything
Let's
exciting?
see. Yes, I'm in February. I haven't reached midterm season yet, which is great. I'm just soaking up the last bit of my senior year. I've been seeing my friends a bunch. I've really gotten into this game, Settlers of Catan. So I've been having a
Yeah.
lot of board game nights, which has been really awesome. And yeah, it's just
You've never played it before?
I hadn't until this semester, which seems kind of crazy. Like I think
Can
I
you
had been with friends playing it, but
can you explain it to me? Because I've never played it. I just know it's something that a lot of engineers play.
yeah, honestly, I think you would be very interested in it, Paul.
I've
And
heard
actually,
good things, and I don't mean it negatively.
Mhm.
I've heard good things. It's one of those things where I'm like, yeah, I don't know if I want to
Yeah.
do something new, but tell me about it.
Yeah. So I think it's a very industrial engineering game, to be completely honest. So there's this very clear tie to probability. So like how often you'd roll on a certain number. And the idea is like the board's set up differently every time, and it's kind of random on like where the different resources are placed and then the different numbers. And like you roll a dice, and if you have a settlement that's built attached to something, then like you'd get those resources. And the key is to accumulate victory points. So those would be, there's a couple of different ways that you can acquire a victory point. It's just the perfect mix of strategy and luck and like you have some interpersonal skills because you can trade with the other people who are playing with you, and you try to think about what they're doing.
Huh.
It's a fun game.
So
We actually, yeah.
so to me, Settlers of Catan gets thrown out, and this is again me barely paying attention, but like there's like role-playing games like Dungeons and
Hmm.
Dragons, and then there's like card games like Magic and Pokemon and stuff like that. And Settlers of Catan is not either of those things. It's just
Hmm.
like a board game
Yeah, it's a big strategy game. So
strategy, like
I'd
Risk.
yes, that's probably the
Mm,
closest that like Risk, or some people say Ticket to Ride is pretty similar as well. But
Ticket to Ride.
yeah, it's definitely a strategy board game. So there's no role playing. But yeah, you're building your own world and kind of competing against other people. I think it's a great game. We bought like the expansion pack last week so we
How
can
long
have
does
up
the
to
game
six
last?
people. Depends on how long people are taking on their turns, whether they're like asking everybody and like begging them to trade with them, or if they kind of just move on. So I'd say probably between an hour and a half and 3 hours. Really, it's been pretty variable based on who I'm playing with, but yeah.
Interesting. Okay. All right. Cool. Well, I'll take a look at it and start figuring out whether that's something we want to do. I mean, I've
Mhm.
only ever heard great things. It's just one of those things where I only have so much brain power and not enough to begin with. So anytime I'm thinking about whether I'm going to do something new, it's all a question of the dwindling resources that I have available to me at this point. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I'll definitely take a look at this
I
one though.
totally recommend it. It was one of those things I feel like I kept putting off learning too. And then my roommates both got very into it. So here I am.
Awesome. Very cool. Very cool. Well, it is February in the admission world. We're kind of in the thick of it right now. And everyone that's applied, some have been admitted through early action. The majority of people are waiting. Everybody who has been deferred or who applied regular decision will receive an admission update, a decision actually at the end of March. And so just stay tuned. You know, we're about 7-ish weeks, 7.5-ish weeks away from that final decision. There's nothing you can do, nothing you should do right now other than just try to forget about it. And we'll make the announcement as we get closer when we have a specific day. When I say we, I mean the university. So just sit tight. And I know that other colleges and universities make admission decisions at different timelines. Some are before us, some are after us. And it creates this level of anxiety and nerves that I'm sure everybody's feeling. But when it comes to USC, nothing is going wrong. Nothing has gone wrong. And we will get back in touch with you at the end of March with those decisions. What is probably an important part to talk about is for students that are younger than that. This is often the time of year when juniors start to look at colleges and universities, and we have a number of different programs and activities available to them so they can understand more about this place. And one of the things I always want to encourage those students to do is to come visit. We have a number of different campus visit opportunities. Our Visit Viterbi experience is running on Mondays and Fridays and a few Wednesdays as well. And you can come and learn more about our programs and the admission process, meet some students and see some things. Everything is on our website, and so you can register for that. And when we get into President's Day week, because a lot of people have that week off, we have events going on every single day. And so there's lots of opportunities to join us. And if you can't make it to campus, we have a number of different virtual info sessions that will go on occasionally, usually every week or so, online on different days and also occasional weekends. We're going to launch a few more of those for March and April in the next couple of days. So lots of stuff for you to absorb, lots of things happening. It's winter, but it's definitely that time of year where people start to look. So we're excited to have you visit. Other than that, Maya, anything else you wanted to talk about? Am I forgetting anything?
That's all. That's all. I'm about to go maybe take a nap, maybe curl up with a book, decompress.
There you go. Well, go get that nap.
Mm.
Enjoy that. Everybody, hopefully you haven't fallen asleep during this thing. And if you have, well, go back to sleep. And we'll see you on the other side of this with another episode of Viterbi Voices next week. Bye, everybody.